All right, so the parathyroid glands. We just finished talking about the thyroid, and keep in mind, the thyroid and parathyroid have nothing to do with each other, even though they sound similar. The word para, or the prefix para, means next to. So these are little glands that are found next to the thyroid. So the name itself, parathyroid, is not about what it does, but it tells you about where they're located. Okay? So where they're located are found on the posterior aspect of the thyroid. Now let's just review this really quickly. If you're looking at the trachea, okay, the windpipe of the person, the thyroid, which is my right hand, will go on like this. But it does not wrap. My thumb and my middle finger are not touching each other. It's not a donut, but more like the letter U if you look at a bird's eye view. If I turn it around, that's what it'll look like. It'll look like there'll be one, this is the left, this is the back of the neck. Does that make sense? This is going to be the left lobe, and here's the right lobe of the thyroid. And on there, you will find pea-like structures, usually 2 or 3 on one lobe and 2 and 3 on the other lobe. Those are called the parathyroid glands. Okay? Parathyroid hormone is going to do the opposite effect of calcitonin. Remember, calcitonin is going to tone down or decrease calcium levels when the calcium levels are high. So when calcium levels are high, that tells the thyroid to spit out calcitonin to tone it down. Now it goes down really low. So now your calcium level in your bloodstream is very low. That's going to send a message to the parathyroid glands to spit out parathyroid hormone to raise the level of calcium in the bloodstream. So it does the opposite effect. So it's a teeter-totter. As calcium levels go down, PTH will make it go up. As the calcium goes up, calcitonin goes down. It's a teeter-totter, right? It's just the way your thermostat works in your house. You want 70 degrees, goes too high, too low. Whether the air conditioner kicks on or the heater kicks on, it's the same way here, okay? And they target the same organs, calcitonin versus parathyroid hormone, okay? It's just going to do the opposite effect. So now with the parathyroid hormone, it's going to do everything it can to raise levels of calcium in the bloodstream by targeting bone, but it's not, what specific cell is it going to target though? Osteoclasts or osteoblasts? Clasts, right? With a C. Because they're little Pac-Men, they're going to chomp away at the bone to spit calcium into the bloodstream. Okay? So it's going to increase the activity of osteoclasts. It'll also go and target, the parathyroid is going to target kidneys. And it's not going to make you spill out calcium into the urine. We got to reabsorb that and get it back into the bloodstream. And that's what it's going to do. It also goes to the intestines, and all the dietary calcium that you're taking from milk products and other places, it's going to target the intestines and say, hey, intestines, you know, don't let that calcium slip on out into your stool. We need to absorb it and get it into our bloodstream. Okay? So it does the opposite effects of calcitonin. Okay? Questions about that? And keep in mind, calcium is not just to keep your bones strong. We've been reiterating this and emphasizing in A&P1 because it does much more than making bones and teeth strong. It's more important in muscle contraction, nerve conduction, and so forth. So we always need an adequate supply of calcium in the bloodstream so that we can have muscle contraction for your heart, smooth muscle, and so forth, nerve conduction.
Like something particular, like if you're growing up and you're drinking that much milk and stuff, and you stop, so like the PTH wasn't really active when you're growing up, does it become like weaker when it's not being used?
Not that I know. Your body will just because you get calcium from other places. And if it was that low, you would have osteoporosis at a much early age.
No, but I'm saying like your diet supplemented the calcium so that you never had to, your PTH never really had to increase the blood level.
It does though, because even if you take calcium into your intestines, what's going to tell the intestines to take that calcium and put it into your bloodstream? Right? So the PTH is always working. Okay? Now, here's a little thought about this, since you brought that up. How do you explain that if someone has invasive thyroid cancer and the surgeon now has to remove the thyroid, but then they look at the calcium levels about 3 months later and they notice that they're very low? What do you think has happened? Not indirectly, you're absolutely right. These are pea-like structures, and this is something, hint, you should understand. That if there's invasive thyroid cancer, it could be, it goes in all different directions as cancer, really nasty stuff. And it could go all around the parathyroids, and that surgeon I'm sure he or she is very skillful, but you got to try and dissect the thyroid off of the parathyroids and leave parathyroids there. But if it's so encased by this tumor, this cancer, then chances are when they remove the thyroid, they also accidentally, or I wouldn't say accidentally, but they also remove some of the parathyroid glands also. And that's going to affect the calcium. Does that make sense? You should understand that concept there. Okay? That does happen. It's not uncommon for that to happen. We just don't have any control about where cancer goes. Okay? So this is just showing you the same thing, all right, where parathyroid, it targets the bone, intestines, and kidney. Same way as calcitonin, and it kind of shows you what it does there. Just look on that for yourself. Now, if we have too much parathyroid hormone, we have a condition called hyperparathyroidism, which means they will have a lot of calcium in their bloodstream. We call that condition hypercalcemia. Hyper meaning an above level, calcium for calcium, emia in bloodstream. So it's a high level of calcium in the bloodstream. So if that happens, is the osteoclast activity working very much or very little? Very much. So what happens to your bones if these little Pac-Men are chomping away? Do they become more like styrofoam or like loofahs? You know, guys know what loofahs are? It's that crazy looking thing if you're living with your sister or the guys probably having an issue with this, right? The loofah in the bathtub. You live with a girl or a mother or something, it's that thing that kind of looks like a sponge that looks like something came from the ocean. You ladies know what I'm talking about, right? But that's what that is. Your bones, are they going to turn into that, or are they going to be turning into something like lead pipes, heavy pipes? If the osteoclasts are doing away. Oh, yeah, they'll be like loofahs, right? So that's why we get brittle bones with hyperparathyroidism, because the osteoclasts are very active, and you could form osteoporosis at a very young age. Okay? You'll get duodenal ulcers. You'll learn about that. Calcium actually makes more hydrochloric acid come out in the stomach. You get kidney stones because the kidneys get overwhelmed with all this calcium, and it starts clumping up and forming stones. And you also get some kind of psychoses usually because calcium is important with nerve conduction. So my little mnemonic for something like this is bones, groans, stones, and moans. Right? Bones makes sense. Stones, that makes sense. Moans like, and groans like, Right? Right? A little mnemonic for that. All right? Now we also have hypoparathyroidism. Like I said, the most common cause of that is usually accidental removal of the parathyroid glands during a thyroidectomy. When you removal of the thyroid for whatever reason, most commonly for cancer, then the parathyroid glands could also be indirectly, like how to say, indirectly or accidentally removed. Okay? So that's what happens, all right? And then the bloodstream gets low calcium. We see that's hypocalcemia, right? Low levels of calcium in the bloodstream. And in this case, you get hyperexcitability of nerves and muscles. We won't go too much into the details of this. You get muscle cramps and convulsions and death if it gets very, very low. Because like I said, it's not, you need calcium to do these kinds of things, okay? Muscle contractions and nerve stimulation. All right, don't worry so much about this. I won't ask you about this, but these are how we can test for hypoparathyroidism, or let's say low levels of calcium. The doctor will do a few of these different tests. But if you're curious, that's what that is. I'm not going to ask you about those. All right, now, histology of parathyroid glands. All right? We have T cells and oxyphil cells, and that's what it looks like. Any questions? Good. I'm not going to ask you about that. All right? So don't worry about histology of parathyroid. The only thing I do want you to see is when you see this, here's the parathyroid, and here's the thyroid. They're right next to each other. This is how we can actually check to see if we remove some of the parathyroid glands, because the pathologist will get the tumor and see if there's any parathyroid tissue in there. But that, if you remember, it kind of looks like broken pink stained glass that I kind of showed you about. Okay? Again, I won't ask you about histology of parathyroid. All right, very briefly about the thymus gland. Okay? Not much here, but I want to say it's located behind the sternum, on top of or anterior to the heart. And in children, this is a very active and very large gland. In adults, it's not even, as you get older, it becomes non-existent. In children, what it does is it releases a hormone, or many hormones called thymosins. And thymosins are hormones that are going to mature a certain white blood cell. Okay? These white blood cells are lymphocytes, and they become what we call T lymphocytes, T cell lymphocytes. We'll learn more about that in hematology. We'll learn more about that in immunology. But understand that in children, it's going to mature a certain type of white blood cells to help fight in the immunology. Now, in adults, we don't need to have the thymus make them because all our white blood cells are mature. Then they're just going to go through mitosis and just make one mature cell will turn into two mature cells. Will turn into 4, 8, 16, 32, and so forth. So it just does it automatically. Okay? But as a child, they're not all mature, so they're developing, and in order for them to develop, you need a hormone to do that, and that's thymosins. Okay, so really the thymus is non-functioning in an adult. Usually about like 21 years old and onward, it shrivels and shrinks, and it doesn't do anything. In a child, it's very important. If you don't have that, then you can't mature certain white blood cells. You ever hear the bubble boy? The bubble boy basically doesn't have the thymus working. Okay, he can't be exposed to all the different germs that are out there.